today's video is going to be an eyeshadow palette tag. This is the Eyeshadow Palette Tag 5000, and this palette tag was created by ChicGeek. I will leave her channel linked below, but I've been seeing this tag going around YouTube, and I decided that I wanted to jump on the bandwagon and do another eyeshadow palette tag. I mean, who doesn't love a good eyeshadow palette tag video? I love doing them at least like maybe once a year and see what kind of, viral eyeshadow palette tag is out there. And again, I've been seeing quite a few of my favorite channels do this tag, so I kind of wanted to join in. So this one isn't too long. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. There's only 10 questions, so this is not going to be like a super long video. I just thought this would be a fun, easy video to film today. Okay, I will leave her channel linked below. Go check her out. I haven't even heard of her or watched her before this tag video, so I'm going to go check her out after this, and you should as well. So let's start out with the first question. And the first question is, palette you wore on a special occasion. And I feel like this question is in every single eyeshadow palette tag. But I'm just going to answer with my 3 favorite Natasha Denona palettes, because I always end up wearing Natasha Denona on pretty much any special occasion now. And if it's not Natasha Denona, I'll usually wear my Pat McGrath Celestial Divinity palette, or I'll wear my Dior Backstage Amber Neutrals palette. I believe that's what it's called. But usually I like to wear a luxury eyeshadow palette when I go out for a special occasion, like for my birthday, or for my mom's birthday, or for my boyfriend's birthday, or for my friend's wedding last year. I didn't use Natasha Denona for my sister's wedding, but the makeup artist did use a Pat McGrath shadow from the Celestial Christmas palette. I believe it was last year's, like the really colorful one. She used one of those shimmers on my lid for my sister's wedding, and then she used ColourPop Stone Cold Fox singles in my crease. So like I was paying attention to what she was using on me. So, but for my friend's wedding last year, I wore the Natasha Denona Retro palette, because I brought this palette with me to make sure, because my friend told me that we had to bring our own makeup to supply for that makeup artist. Like, she wasn't really like a makeup artist that had like a full kit of everything. She was kind of like one of her family's friends, like one of her mom's friends that does makeup, and she did a great job. Like, she made me look beautiful. But I wanted her to use this palette on me, and I really love how the look turned out, and I just ended up using this one on that special occasion. And I feel like whenever you wear a Natasha Denona palette, your eyeshadow is just gonna look beautiful, because I get so many compliments when I wear Natasha Denona's palettes, because there's just something about her eyeshadow formula and the way that her shimmers look on the lid and the way her mattes blend, that like really I don't want to wear any other palette or formula when I go somewhere special. So this looked absolutely beautiful on me for my friend's wedding, and I love it. And then also the other one is the My Dream palette. I love wearing this one for special occasions. I actually wore this one to my other friend's wedding back in February for my boyfriend's friend's wedding. I wanted to wear this one. This one was also like the newest Natasha Denona palette in my collection at the time, but this is the only palette that I wanted to wear. And honestly, this is probably my favorite special occasion palette now. I just want to wear this whenever I go to like out to a dinner, or out to dinner with my family for a birthday, or with my boyfriend. I wore this on my boyfriend's birthday as well. So I didn't just wear it to the wedding, I wore it on his birthday too. And I absolutely love this palette. I cannot wait to wear it again, and I haven't worn it in a hot second because I've been using the Yucca palette so much. But I haven't worn that one in a little while, but I also haven't worn that one for a special occasion. But this one is just such a perfect special occasion palette. It ranges from really beautiful mid-toned, warm-toned mattes to like cooler tones to like really deep and dark, sultry, sexy browns and blacks and like purpley shades. I just absolutely love this palette. I'm obsessed with it. I love the multi-chrome down here. The shimmers are absolutely insanely beautiful in this palette. I just absolutely love this one. And then the last one, I swear I don't really have a trio of any other palettes in any other question because I really tried just to pick one palette in every category, but I couldn't not mention these three palettes because I truly wear these for any special occasion. And then the last one would be the Natasha Denona Gold palette. I have worn this palette so much. This is definitely still my most used Natasha Denona palette, even though I don't wear it too often anymore. I actually wore it to my best friend's funeral, and then I think I also wore it to her funeral as well, like her mom's funeral and also my best friend's funeral. So it's not a special occasion, but it's a very special day of remembrance for me. So I wanted to mention this palette as well, but also I have probably worn this palette countless times on special occasions. I can't remember specifically which ones, but I have worn this palette so much. I've worn this palette to Jewish services a few times, and I've worn it out to dinner with my family. Actually, now I remember when I wore this for my graduation dinner. So that was my special occasion with this palette recently. I wore it back in May after I graduated from Post and got my bachelor's degree. My mom took me out to dinner with my family, and this is the palette that I wore. So I wanted to mention this one because it's so stunning. I don't even know if this one's still available, but I just absolutely love this palette. It is one of the best palettes in my entire collection. I wouldn't pay $130 for it. I would probably wait for a sale because I think sometimes she does put this on sale for half price because she was discontinuing it for a while, and then she brought it back like a million times, but I think that she has put this on half price on Sephora. So I would say grab it when you can. I don't know if it's still available anymore though. Like I said, she keeps on like discontinuing it and bringing it back. But this one is absolutely beautiful, and I'm so glad that I wore it on my graduation dinner day. So those would be the palettes that I would go into for any special occasion. It's always going to be those three, or the Pat McGrath Celestial Divinity, or the Dior Backstage palette, which I love all of those. I really love combining the Dior Backstage palette with one of the shimmers from the Celestial Divinity palette. That's usually what I do for a special occasion. Like I did that for my friend's bridal shower last year, and it looks so beautiful. So that's what I'll usually do with that. Okay, number 2, palette you love, but it's repetitive. And I was looking through my collection, and pretty much this was the only one that I could think of when I was looking at my palettes, and that is the Sigma Ambiance palette. Now, you guys know how obsessed I was with this palette last year, but honestly, this palette is super repetitive. But for me, like, because some people say, like, oh, like, a lot of the neutrals look the same. There's not really that much variation in the neutrals. But for me, I never get bored with this palette because it's the tones of neutrals in here that I really, really love. And also, like, I know, again, that it's pretty repetitive when it comes to the matte selection, but what makes this palette so beautiful is that the shimmers are so stunning and interesting in this palette that even though it's repetitive tones, the shimmers make up for it so much. Because again, Sigma shimmers are just some of the best shimmers that I've ever tried. They're so sparkly, but also they're just so stunning and wet looking on the lid. And there's also a bunch of different shimmer formulas in this palette that makes it so much fun and interesting to be a neutral palette. So you have like your regular shimmer formula, and then you have this super metallic shimmer formula, and then this one is like very sparkly and metallic, and this one is just straight up sparkly and has so many different like sparkly shimmers in it This one's a regular shimmer again. This one is kind of a regular shimmer again. And then this one is a super sparkly, shimmery shimmer. And then with the mattes, even though again they're repetitive, there's enough variation in them that they go from really light to really dark. And you have like 3 or 4 different deepening options, which I really like. And then you have these more mid-toned brownish shades that I don't think that this palette is repetitive at all. For me anyway, because I love warm tone neutrals, and this is just like one of the best neutral palettes in my collection. Because first, the formula is amazing, but also I just find that yes, the looks can be similar, but I never get tired of this palette because this is kind of like catered to my preference of what I would want a neutral palette to be. Like, I love this palette so much. The only thing I would say is that I wish that this color was a bit lighter for me so I could use it as a brow bone highlight, because then this would be the absolute perfect neutral palette for me. But the matte ivory shade in the new mod palette is a lot lighter than this one. I usually just pull in that one if I'm using this palette because that one is perfect for my brow bone. This one's a little bit dark for me. I can't even really use it as a crease shade because it's too light, so I don't really use that a hell of a lot in this palette. But the other tones I've used so much, and I just absolutely love this palette. So that would definitely be my answer for that question. Okay, number 3, palette you got your money's worth. And I swear not everything is ColourPop in this video. Are you surprised I haven't even mentioned ColourPop yet? But I have to say this palette for this answer because I ended up falling hard for this palette. I knew I was going to love it, but I thought it was like super boring when it first came out. And then after I picked it up and I tried it, I'm like, I know I'm going to use this palette so much. So number 3 is palette you got your money's worth. And I have to say the ColourPop Not a Box of Chocolates palette. This neutral palette is like one of my all-time favorite palettes in my collection, and also one of my all-time favorite ColourPop palettes. But they just did such a good job with the different tones and variations and textures and formulas in this palette. Like, I didn't think I was gonna love this palette as much as I actually do, and I use it at least once a month because sometimes I just want to wear a good neutral palette, and honestly I don't really have too many straight up neutral palettes from ColourPop. I have this one, I have the Nude Mood, I have Going Coconuts, and I have the Plush Like Me, which is not really a straight up neutral palette. But besides those 3 that I mentioned, those are really the only palettes that are just straight up neutral. And then the rest of the palettes that I have are mostly half neutral, half colorful, or they'll have like more muted colorful tones. This is like really my favorite straight up neutral palette from ColourPop. The other 2, the Nude Mood and the Going Coconuts, they both have light enough brow bone highlights for me to use that I like those just a tad bit more. If this one had a lighter ivory shade for me, it would have been absolutely my favorite neutral palette ever. But I understand that this was catering more towards light to medium to dark skin tones, and I feel like the deep dark mattes down here are so gorgeous and chocolatey brown. This is the best chocolate themed palette I've ever used. And I know people are like, why is everybody duping Too Faced every time they come out with a chocolate palette? And it's like, they didn't trademark it. They're not the originators. Like, anybody can make anything chocolate themed. It's not like that's claimed, but this is just such a beautiful palette in the way that they did the tones. Like, you have these lighter medium browns up here, then you have more of your mid-tone browns, then you have like your more warm tone deeper browns, and then you have your really deep dark chocolatey browns on the bottom. And then all the different shimmers are so stunning. Like, this Champagne Truffle shade is the most insane inner corner highlight I've ever used. It's such a stunning inner corner highlight. And then Peanut Brittle. I love this glitter. It's not really a pressed glitter. It's more of that like super metallic, more refined glitter formula. And it's so stunning on the lid. And then this shade Honeycomb Crunch is such a stunning wet looking shimmer on your lid. And then the rest of these shimmers are more of their standard formula, but these two are so sparkly and beautiful. And then this one is Red Tone, which is so beautiful on the lid. And then Still Bitter is just a regular schmegular like warm tone brown shimmer. But they're all just so, this is like when ColourPop actually like curated their palettes very carefully. And this palette just came out of the blue and I was like, this is one of the best palettes they've ever done. And like, when they do their 16 pan palettes, I fall in love with them. Like, I absolutely love the Lust for Dusk palette, and I just can't get enough of this one. I think I've probably used this one more than the Lust for Dusk palette because this is just a standard neutral palette that I absolutely love, and I'm going to use it all the time because it's a neutral palette. So, definitely got my money's worth out of this one, even though it's only like not even a $20 palette. I would still say out of all the palettes in my collection, this would be the one. And also the So Jaded. I would say the So Jaded if it was still available, but I can't say the So Jaded in every single eyeshadow palette tag video. And also I haven't used that palette in quite a long time. But that's still the most used palette in my whole collection. But I would say out of all my ColourPop palettes, this is probably the most used palette that I own now. I just absolutely love it. Okay, number 4 is palette that is an amazing deal, and this is the one I'm actually wearing on my eyes today. I would say if you were looking for a palette for an amazing deal, I would go with any ColourPop palette, but I didn't want to just say ColourPop. I really wanted to mention a palette that, and a brand that I think that their prices are so great. And their formula is so amazing that I feel like a lot more people are becoming fans of this brand. And also, like, I mean, it's not like they haven't been well known for a while now. But also just their prices are amazing. And I'm talking about my Beauty Bay Fiery palette. This palette is just, it is so good for the price. This palette is like, I think I only paid like $16 for this palette, and I didn't think I was going to be so blown away with the formula. Like, this was my #1 palette. I believe I got this palette back in 2021, so I think I've had it for a good 2 years now, but I decided to whip it out and use it today, and I am just reminded on how good and easy the formula is to use. It is such a good beginner-friendly formula, and you get a full 16 pan palette. I love 16 pan to 20 pan. That's usually like my sweet spot, or like 12 to 20 is usually the standard size that I like for eyeshadow palettes. But this one, like, I don't think it's, even though it looks like it's super repetitive, again, this has such good matte tones in here. Like, we have some really light ones to more of like the more pumpkin spicy kind of colors, to the more reddish tones, to the deeper darker mattes, that it's just, and then the tones and shimmers and the different variations of colors of shimmers, I just absolutely am obsessed. And I just feel like this was one of their best curated palettes. And y'all know I'm a warm tone lover, and I absolutely love this palette. And just the mattes blend like butter, and the shimmers are so stunning and easy to use. And they just apply, and they always look so stunning on the eyes. So I would say if you're looking for a cheap, easy formula, I would just go with Beauty Bay or ColourPop or Cosmic Brushes. I was going to say the Cosmic Brushes Muse palette for this question, but I didn't actually purchase the Muse palette with my own money. My friend Beauty Jacked actually bought that palette for me, but I absolutely love that palette. And I would say that was definitely a palette I got my money's worth out of, and it's an amazing deal. But again, I didn't purchase it, so I didn't want to mention it unless I would have purchased it myself. But I would definitely say and recommend Beauty Bay for anyone that is looking for like a good cheap palette to start with, Beauty Bay is a great deal, and they just have amazing quality eyeshadows. So I would just say Beauty Bay. So what I'm wearing today, how many times can I rhyme? Say Beauty Bay today. So what I'm wearing today is I started with honey roast in the crease. Then I darkened up the crease more with caramel sauce, and then I used chocolate souffle on the outer corners, and then I just decided to go in with the gold all over the lid called Adorn. Such a beautiful like orangey gold. It's so stunning. And then for the inner corners, I just used all that glitters, and that's everything that I used from the palette. It was just such an easy, beautiful look. I even got a compliment at Sephora on my eyeshadow, which was really, really nice. So yeah, that is it for that question. Now let me go grab the rest of the palettes for the rest of the questions. Okay, now we're on to question number 5, and this one is, quad you love and wish was a larger palette? So honestly, I didn't really know what I was gonna answer for this question because I don't own any quads. I'm not really a quad eyeshadow girl at all. I need a palette to have at least 8 shades or more because I like creating full looks with my palettes, or even if it's just a look that I've done like a million times, like with the Beauty Bay palette, I like having options in my palettes. Like, I can't just buy a quad with 2 mattes and 2 shimmers. Like, I always use at least 3 mattes every time I do a look and 2 shimmer shades. And for me, I just feel like with a quad, it's just not enough options. I pretty much have decluttered a lot of my smaller palettes from my collection because I just don't use them. But mostly if I had a smaller palette, it would be a 5 pan or more. But I don't really use any of those anymore. But the only one that I still own, but I literally just put it on display. But I do really like this palette. If it had more than just 5 shades, I probably would use it way more. So for this question, I was just going to say my ColourPop Bambi palette because this is my smallest palette in my whole collection. And I do really like the quality of this. And it's super cute. But I just feel like with quads and these kind of, you know, eyeshadow palettes, you don't really get your money's worth. You can only really get like 1 look out of this because there's only 1 shimmer and 4 mattes. I do like the variation of mattes in here, but honestly, if they would have made this like a lighter tone shimmer, like the same color but in like a shimmer form, I feel like I probably would have used it a lot more. And, you know, I could have gotten like more than 1 look out of this palette. So that's why for me, if this was a bigger palette, like maybe like a 6 or 7 pan, or literally just had like 1 extra shade on both sides, then I probably would use it a lot more if it was like a 7 pan eyeshadow palette. But I just don't use it really. I've only used it like a couple of times, and I basically got sucked into the packaging of this one because I just thought it was so cute because it's Disney. But I just don't use it enough because it's super tiny, but again, the packaging's adorable. But I don't really reach for it because it's too tiny and it's too small. So like, it's like honestly one of the last palettes on my mind to think about using. So, but yeah, I don't own any quads and I don't intend to because I'm just not a quad person. Okay. Number 6, you love the quality of the eyeshadow but hate the packaging. And for some reason, again, like not really one palette came to like the forefront of my mind until I really looked at my collection. And honestly, again, I don't really buy too many. If I don't like the packaging of a palette, I'm not going to buy it. But also, unless I really love the theme, like if it's like a collaboration that I love, like if it's the Powerpuff Girls collection from ColourPop or like Lizzie McGuire, if it's like a theme that I can't say no to, then I will buy it and put up with it. But honestly, like, and also I don't know why I bought this collection at the time. Like, I just thought it was super cute, but I think that this palette is so bulky. So the one I wanted to say for this question is the Hip Dot Addams Family palette. Now, I actually bought the full collection and I got the palette with the 3 lipsticks, But that was the whole collection, was just 3 lipsticks and the eyeshadow palette. But I just think this palette is so bulky for how small it is that it is kind of annoying. Like how much it sticks out. At least it's super lightweight. But I feel like this is just super thick for how small it is. And I feel like it could have been downsized a little bit because it's kind of a little bit wasteful. But the quality of Hip Dot's eyeshadows are so good. I was very impressed with their formula. And also, I just really liked this color story as well, but it also really reminds me of the Melt Cosmetics, the Waiting Room palette. They have very similar color stories that in the long run, did I really need both of these palettes? Definitely not, because I'm more in love with the Beetlejuice theme and movie than I was with this movie. But I didn't even watch this movie until last Halloween, even though I had this collection the year before that, which I believe was again in 2021, is when this collaboration came out. And I think that was when the second movie came out for the Addams Family, or maybe it was still the first one, I can't remember. But I finally watched, I think I watched both of them last Halloween. I didn't even get to watch them in 2021. So I owned this without even seeing the movie, which I usually don't do. But I was just really drawn to this collection and I thought it was really good. The quality is beautiful. The mattes blend so well. And the shimmers are absolutely stunning. But just the packaging is a bit annoying because they could have downsized this quite a bit. But it's a really good palette. You know, people say that Hip Dot is like the big collaboration brand, and they say that the only thing that they do is collaborate with a bunch of different brands and different companies. But I really feel like now Glamlight is kind of taking that crown, because I don't remember the last time Glamlight actually came out with a collection that was not a collaboration. So now I feel like Glamlight is the new Hip Dot. But Glamlight really does come out with some awesome products. But honestly, I'm getting so tired of the collaborations at this point. I'm like, when are they going to go back to their food-themed palettes that are not a collaboration? But I didn't pick out any of my Glamlight palettes because I honestly don't mind the packaging of any of them. I think they're super cute and I wouldn't change a thing about them. But this is just so unnecessarily big for being a small palette. So that's why I had to say that one. Okay. Show your dream palette with singles. Now, I'm not a huge singles person anymore. I used to use my single shadows so much more. But I actually did create a singles palette when I bought from this brand. So I'm just going to say this palette. And also, like, these are some of my best quality singles in my collection. And this basically would be my dream color story if I could only get single shadow brands. So I'm just going to say my Lethal Cosmetics singles palette. This would be my dream singles palette if I had to create a singles palette with singles, right? Show your dream palette with singles. Because you guys know I love warm tone neutrals. I love deeper tone browns. And I love my pinks. So I did these warmer tone, mid-tone neutrals for the crease. Then I did like this more mid-tone brown. And then I did these 2 deeper toned browns. And one of them is very brown. And this one has more like a purpley brown in them. So the purpley brown works really well with the 2 pink tones. And then I had a more mid-tone pink and more of like a, not a hot pink, but like slightly hot pink matte. And then with the shimmers, I have like this bronzy gold. I have this super yellow gold, which y'all know I love gold, so I had to pick out 2. And then I have a cool tone, like really beautiful shimmer. Then I have a pink shimmer, of course. And then this one is more of like a coppery bronze color. And these are my dream tones. This would be my dream palette. I probably could use this almost every single day and never get tired of it. and I really love Lethal Cosmetics formula. I love their mattes. They're so deeply pigmented and rich and so easy to blend, and the shimmers are so stunning on the lid. Some of the best singles in my collection, so I had to say the Lethal Cosmetics singles. I do have a bunch of Makeup Geek ones. I have a bunch of ColourPop ones, but honestly, there's not enough variation in the tones to use all of them to create a dream palette, and honestly, I don't really do that with singles. So I just said this one because this one I actually did create my own singles to put in this palette. So that's why I just wanted to say that, because I already did the work. Okay. Number 8, palettes you like to combine together. And I actually have been doing this probably the most this year out of any other year that I've had my eyeshadow palettes, because I used to not really combine my eyeshadow palettes that much, and now I do it a ton. I love combining my Natasha Denona palettes together, like the Retro and the My Dream palette. I love combining those two together. I also really love combining a lot of my ColourPop palettes together. I'll also, I combined the Hocus Pocus 1 and the Hocus Pocus 2 palette together, and that was a really pretty look. I've combined like a bunch of countless ColourPop palettes this year. I combined the So Jaded palette with the Star Wars palette, and that was a really pretty look. I've combined a bunch of my other palettes with each other this year from ColourPop. And then also, I really like combining some of my Oden's Eye palettes together. Like, I combined the Flora Story palette and the Batty Bean palette, Planet Spirit palette, like a bunch of times, because those both came out together. And I've combined those a few times together. And also, I've combined the Legendary Diversa collection with the Fancy Face, Judy, Annette's Makeup Corner, and Angelica Nyquist. I've combined all of those palettes together multiple times, and they're so beautiful together. But I really wanted to say probably the brand I've done that the most with this year. I'm just going to say that for this year, because obviously this palette tag came out this year. I would definitely say my Nomad Cosmetics palettes are the ones that I've been combining together the most this year. I combined the Nomad Verona palette with the Hudson Valley palette and used like the more cooler tone shades in them, and it was a beautiful look. I've also combined the Verona palette, I believe, with the Whistler Snow Lodge, and this was a really pretty combination. And then I've also combined the Whistler Snow Lodge, I believe, with the Royal Europe palette, and it was so stunning together. And I also combined the Nomad Okavango Safari palette with, I believe, the Hudson Valley palette, and that was a beautiful combination as well. I think it was these two, I can't remember, but I have probably interchanged the Nomad palettes the most together out of all the palettes that I'm talking about. I don't remember which palette I combined with the Feats de Provence palette. I think it was the Verona palette as well, because I think I used like the deep purple in there along with like the lavender purples in here, and it was so beautiful. But like, Nomad's palettes are so beautiful interchangeably together because they all have such unique color stories, but somehow they all go together like beautifully. Like, this is the Feats de Provence. This is one of my favorite spring summer palettes. I've actually used this one a couple times this past spring and summer. And then I'm not going to show you guys all of them. And then the most recent one is the Okavango Safari, and this one I've been using a ton because it's a neutral palette. And it's a really pretty one, but I would say, like, out of all my Nomad palettes, is probably my least favorite formula wise. I don't love the formula in this one, but it's a good palette, and I've used it a ton because it's neutral. So I do like it. I'm not in love with it, but I keep on telling myself that, and then I keep on going back to it. So maybe I do love it, but I wish that the formula was better. And then my favorite palette from Nomad is the Royal Europe, because the formula of this one is insanely amazing, and also this has their multi-chromes in here, and this is the first time they ever did multi-chromes, but I've combined this palette with almost every palette that I've shown you guys, and I just think that this palette is so beautifully interchangeable with the rest of them. And also the mattes in here are insanely pigmented and they last so long, and the multi-chromes are so beautiful. I really want to go back into this palette at some point because I haven't used my Nomad palettes in a hot second, but I would like to go back to them and use them soon. I've just been using like a few other brands, but you can't go wrong with any Nomad palettes, and that's why I have 6 of them now, because I've become obsessed with this brand. So I would just say definitely Nomad. Okay, hold on. 9 and 10 are both ColourPop. So large palette you wish was smaller, and honestly, again, for me, I don't love purchasing large palettes at all. If it's more than 20 shades, I get very overwhelmed. So like you won't see me purchasing the Bella Beauty Bar 40 pan palettes. I'm like, no, that's too many shades for me. The biggest palette that I had owned until I purchased this one was the ColourPop So Jaded palette, because that was the first 30 pan neutral palette that I've got. I mean, not neutral palette. Why do I keep on saying neutral palette? 30 pan eyeshadow palette that I had gotten in my collection for like ever. Like I really don't buy 30 pan palettes, and then that's the only one that I had from the 30 pans of ColourPop, and I've never purchased any of the other ones. And also I have not purchased any other 30 pan palettes since the So Jaded palette. But then this was the one that I got. That was the biggest palette that I owned from ColourPop since the So Jaded. And I would have to say the Harry Potter Back to Hogwarts palette for this question, because I mean, I would say the Kat Von D holiday palette, but obviously you can't get that one anymore. I don't know if this one's still available either, but I kind of feel like this probably could have been a tad bit smaller. I mean, I absolutely love this palette. This was my #1 palette last year because I fell in love with the quality of this one. I don't know what it was about this, but I just loved it. But after like thinking about it, and honestly, like the packaging is a bit annoying sometimes because you can't fold this back, so you have to use it like this. So maybe I would say, I mean, I don't hate the packaging. Hate is a strong word, but like I wish you could fold the packaging back. But I do think that most of these shades are necessary in here. But did we need all of these browns? Definitely not. I think that the cooler tones are better. But this is a 24 pan eyeshadow palette, and I kind of get why they wanted to make it bigger, because it's for Harry Potter. Like, Harry Potter is huge. I know this caused a lot of controversy, but honestly, I wanted to try this palette because I grew up with Harry Potter, and I'm like, I just really wanted it because I thought it was so pretty. But I would say they probably could have downsized this a little bit. Like, or they could have broken it up into 2 palettes, because I honestly feel like you could have broken it up into the warm tones here, because I always look at this as like 2 12 pan palettes. So this is one 12 pan, and then this is the other 12 pan. They could have just done that. But also, like, maybe they didn't want people to choose as to which house and which colors they wanted to try or get. Or they could have just purchased both, but maybe they just wanted to make it easier. But also, I know it's like the layout of the Marauders map, but honestly, like, I don't see why they could have just broken this up into 2 12 pans. That would have been really, really cute. And it might have done even better than when it came out, because a lot of people really were not feeling it because of J.K. Rowling. So this collection really wasn't a smash hit for ColourPop, which I totally understand, but I think it's wrong to take it out on ColourPop and like, basically these companies come to them and ask them to create a collection and like pay them a lot to create these palettes, but most of the time the licensing, the color, the packaging, the color story is all created from the collaborator. Like this was probably all created by Warner Brothers and not by ColourPop. Like ColourPop just provides the formula, the packaging, and the ability to sell. So like the same thing happens with their Disney palettes and collaborations. So, and it's not like Disney is totally innocent either. I'm not defending J.K. Rowling whatsoever. I'm just saying, like, I wanted to try this because I love ColourPop's quality, and I was very curious on the quality of this, and it did not disappoint. But I just wish it was a little bit smaller, but it is really cute. But, you know, they could have made it like this size, maybe. You know? So, okay. Last question, because I need to stop talking. Okay. Last question is eyeshadow palette you wish had a matching face palette. And for some reason, like, I could not think about which one I really wanted to answer with. I would definitely say my Simply Posh Cosmetics Citrus Punch palette. But even though both of these palettes came out with cheek products, I wish that they were face palettes because I feel like ColourPop would have done such an amazing job with these collections, even though these are both really good collections, and actually both of these collections did pretty well for them. I feel like a face palette would have been so fitting for both of these. And I'm talking about the Limoncello palette and the Flirty Talk palette. Now with the Limoncello, y'all know the Limoncello palette is one of my all-time favorite palettes from ColourPop. I absolutely love this one. I almost used this one today. I was supposed to see my boyfriend, but then he said he wanted to work today. So I was going to use this palette today, but I feel like a matching face palette with like a yellow shade and like a neutral, like, you know, goldeny blush like this, and then like two highlighters that were kind of similar to like this color and this color, they would have been so beautiful. And I feel like they would have been very versatile because I feel like this palette is very beautiful with like the variations in tone, but the shimmers in here are so insanely stunning. But I feel like a matching face palette with this packaging, oh my god, it would have been so cute, and I would have gotten it like immediately. So but what's so crazy is that like I really did not purchase this palette. I didn't purchase this palette at all. It came free with an order. I made a purchase and then got the palette free. And then I didn't realize how much I was actually going to use this palette. But I really think a matching face palette would have been really cute. And then the same thing with the Flirty Talk palette. Because, again, how cute are these packagings? But also, like, I feel like a matching face palette that kind of opened, like, the way that this does, like, vertically. And, again, we could have had some really beautiful, like, pink-toned blushes and like some really beautiful like duochrome pink highlighters. Oh my god, that would have been so stunning. I mean, I actually really like the blushes and highlights that came out with this collection. The highlighter is so stunning. And I know that everyone is obsessed with the heart-shaped compacts for the Valentine's Day collections from ColourPop, but it would have been really cute if they came out with like a heart-shaped face palette. Like, that would have been adorable with, like, some really pretty pinks and some pretty pink highlighters or something. Or they didn't have to do just pink highlighters. They could have came out with some really pretty tones. But, and then I would say probably, like, most of my Odin's Eye palettes and then most of my Nomad palettes. Oh, my God. I wish that Nomad would come out with face palette or some kind of face products when they come out with their eyeshadow palettes. Like, I love their eyeshadow palettes, and I love the whole theming, and I really love that's what their brand is known for, and it's doing really well for them. But if they came out with at least maybe one or two cheek products when they release their eyeshadow palettes, I would be all over it, because I have purchased two of their highlighters in the past when they went on super sale for like $4, but like I believe one of them was part of the Cindy collection for Australia, and the other one was, I can't remember what it was for, but they're both such amazing highlighters, and they have such an amazing highlighter formula that if they came out with like two blushes and one highlighter in a collection, it would be so beautiful. So like the only other like product that they've come out with that hasn't been an eyeshadow palette. I think for this year, I can't even remember. For the Verona, there was no other product with that. With the Royal Europe, there was no other product with that. With the Akavongo Safari, why do I feel like there was something else with it? I can't even remember. But I remember the last time that they actually released kind of like a collection was with the Feats de Provence palette back last summer, and they released 4 different lip glosses with that collection. But if they released blushes or highlights with their next collection, I would be all over it. So yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. So please like and subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram at CPW819 and check out my Poshmark at the same handle. I hope you guys enjoyed this tag. And again, I will leave her channel linked below. And I hope you all have a great day. And what would your answers be for some of these questions? Let me know what your favorite palette was that you got your money's worth out of. I really would like to know the question to that, the answer to that. And I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.